Hello, this is Group 10, and this is our DPI for the movie Parasite, directed by Bong, who don't know the last name. But yeah, so we can start with the music in the movie. Anybody had any thoughts on that?
I noticed that there was joyful music and and suspenseful music when it came time for for the family to come home from the camping trip. And the main character family, they was hiding and partying up in the house or whatnot, and trying to get everything situated back in time before they come home. So I noticed that with the music.
Yeah, and along with that part, it was like the ending of it was the previous housekeeper like hitting her head on the concrete, and then the music just came to a stop, so you can like hear the thump. I thought that was really good because it was going fast and it was loud until that part.
Um, I noticed like for most of the movie, they had like a very like theatrical score. Like mostly like when they were putting together their scheme, when the Kims were putting together their scheme to take over the park house and like take over their jobs, the music was kind of like heightened, especially like when they were trying to get rid of what's her name, Moon Guan, the housekeeper, and when they were trying to like stage it that like she had tuberculosis when they were really just setting off her allergies. So I thought that was really interesting. And then like another thing, during the end of the movie, like after the storm like passes through and like destroys the Kim's home, the music gets more ominous, like as like he's taking Mrs. Park shopping and when she's on the phone, like talking with all her friends, like preparing for the party. And you can see like him like visibly getting like more and more like irritated by her, like her privilege. And then even like when he was in the car driving her, you can see like the look on his face where he just kind of like over the whole thing. And I guess you can move on to the actors and casting.
I will say that they did a good. I think that they did a good job when it came to casting, especially depicting the type of country that they were in, and to us Americans, we the stereotype. Oh, all Asians look alike, but if you are Asian, you can tell the difference between the different Asian countries and who is from where. So I guess they did do a good job with that aspect from it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like with like the whole, I guess, plot dynamic, you could kind of tell like the difference, even though like, from American background, like watching the movie, it was kind of like it had to be subtitled since it was in a different language. I could tell like they definitely carefully picked like the actors because I feel like from each family they kind of just you could tell like the difference, like they depicted their role in like a different way, and just like the acting and the character dynamic.
Yeah, I also kind of thought it was interesting, like when you compare um, Moon Juan and then the mother Chung Suk, um, comparing them, they kind of had like a similar look to them, which is interesting because she was trying so hard to like separate herself from like the original housekeeper, like after seeing her husband in the basement, like she was like so repulsed by her, but like in actuality they were like really similar. They're probably like the most similar people in the movie, I feel like. um and yeah. And then even with her husband in the basement, I feel he did a good job of like acting, I don't know, deranged in a sense, like especially like as the movie progresses, you can see him kind of like becoming more and more unhinged, like, as you can imagine. One would be if they were in a basement for 4 years.
Yes, and I love that they connected the son. I'm forgetting the son's name. I think it was that song. His like ghost experience, and then we see like what he thought, and it ended up being Moon Jwang's husband coming up from the basement. Oh my gosh, that creeped me out.
Yeah, that whole scene was a lot at once. Man. And so we can move on to the editing and camera work. With that, I guess like one thing that's kind of like obvious is like the continuous like comparison from like the upward shots and the downward shots. Um, like it kind of stood out to me more like at the part where the Kim family was leaving the Park's house to go back to their home, like during the rainstorm, and you just keep seeing them going downstairs, and they just continue going down. So it's like showing them go down back to like their reality, which is like interesting in comparison to like when they were in the house by themselves, like all drinking, and they were like talking about like, oh, if you lived here, like what room would you stay in? But then it's kind of like just like a fantasy in a way. But then they go like back down to like their real world.
And also like the shot of just like the stairs like going down. I feel like it was always just like pitch black anytime it was on the screen, like even if it was morning or like night. And that creeped me out too, because then with the music in the background, I had to like look up what type of movie I was watching. I thought it was like a horror movie for a second. So that, and I feel like they were like, there was a moment where they were in their flooded apartment, and the dad was asking the son like what's taking him so long, and the son was like on the right side of the screen holding the rock that Min had given to him, and the lights kept going on and off, but when it went off it was just like completely black on the right side of the screen. That too, so I feel like they have a lot of light work, like they use a lot of light or lack of.
And just because you just sat here and said light, I'm gonna sit here and talk about the color scheme. And I noticed with like when it came with the richer family, like the color scheme was like in the hues of it, they were much brighter as compared to the colors and schemes used for the main character's family or whatnot. I was like, interesting. And they use more darker tones as well. And I guess that can be said to, they're poor, you know what I'm saying? They don't have nice things or access to nice things. So I definitely like use the colors to show that as well.
Yeah, I noticed that with the light, especially like in the ending scene where his name, and the son was like kind of like he was reading the letter to his dad where he was talking about him coming up the stairs, and when he like comes up the stairs and he walks towards the park's window, it was like he's walking towards sunlight. But then like it pans back downwards like into the basement and it's like dark and snowing. And it was kind of showing like I guess like the contrast, like showing like rich equals like a brighter future, but then like the darkness is like the reality in a way.
I don't know if this like was just something I noticed or like is it I guess it was kind of like when he was looking at I forgot I think it was what was his name? Kim Woo, I think I can't remember his name. But so like when he was looking at the stone, I noticed they kind of like with the editing and the camera work, they tried to like focus more so on, I guess, his overall like reaction and how he may have like felt about the stone. Like I noticed that. And then like what Amani said, like how certain scenes in the movie, like it was either like dark, kind of like I think when they were like running downhill, or like when they was running away, I think it was like that scene was kind of dark. And then like versus like how some scenes, like I guess if it was like a lighter and then like a lighter tone, like I guess if they were more like happy or something, like the scenes were kind of lighter and lightning, if that makes sense.
And then with the there were a lot of the transitionings, they were very smooth. I did notice that. But what I also noticed that like the slow motion, there was two slow motion scenes. It played a huge role, especially with the music background. The first one was the fighting over the phone scene between the main family and the old housekeeper or whatnot and her husband. That was pretty funny, if I do say so myself. But I think having it in slow motion helps with the fact that, like, okay, let me slow down the time or whatnot to really show you guys that this scene is important or whatnot. And by having it be in slow motion, like, basically shows like this is a very important scene, in my opinion. And then the slow editing for the kill fest at the end of the movie, I was like, this does not have to be in slow motion right here. This can be a very fast scene, a fast-paced scene right here.
Yeah, for the kill fest, like you said, Imani, I want to piggyback off of what Cassandra said about the light imagery versus the darkness in terms of uh, dreams versus reality. At first, when I saw that scene with him coming up with the knife and, you know, starting to stab a whole bunch of people, I thought that was a dream at first because it kept showing a close up on Mr. Kim. And I was like, I'm not sure this is going to end, you know, in reality. And this is actually real. I felt like, I think it was just something about his face when they kept showing his face. I was just like, oh, this might not be real. But then it turned out to be real. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I guess, you know, it just took some time to actually see, you know, what reality was in terms of just how it's shown and how the characters actually react to it, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what I thought about um, the editing and portraying the actual plot of the movie.
Another thing I noticed about like the editing and the camera work, like and most of the scenes, it would be like two things happening at once. And like sometimes when they usually happen in movies, it kind of like can distract you and like draw your attention and make you kind of like forget what you're looking at or focus on something that's not really important. But like the way that they kind of edited this is kind of like, okay, yes, two things happening, but it's not like a distractor, like a something that would like make you be like, okay, it's too much going on. Like I feel like the way that they edited, like it really was smooth and it really all kind of like fit together with like the details and everything that happened in the movie.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I think it was mostly because they did a lot of like wide view shots, especially in the park house. Since they had like a lot of glass in the house, it was easy to see like multiple things going on. Like you would see someone like in the staircase while someone else is in the kitchen, like or the dining room.
Yeah, that was good. Like how they did that.
Then of course they had, the Spielberg trademarks. They had a little bit of Miss Duvernay's trademarks too. And that one, and I want to say a little bit of Spike Lee's as well. I'm not 100% sure about the Spike Lee one. Yes, Spike Lee too, because deal with class. So yeah, Spike Lee as well.
Okay, so I guess we can talk about the script now. I think one thing that kind of stood out to me was like the way that the families would describe each other. Like, for example, the Kims, well, Chung Suk described Mrs. Park as being nice because she was rich. Like, she kind of saw through um Mrs. Park in a way because she was just like really like naive. Like, it was really easy to get her to like fall for everything that was going on. And I don't know, she just like was an interesting character. But she just like a housewife, a rich housewife who doesn't really, I don't know, like whenever something would go wrong, it would like shake her so much. Almost like, for example, like when Jessica was trying to like tell her that like that song might be like schizophrenic, she like started crying. Like, she had a whole breakdown. And it was just like she just seemed like the type of person that wasn't used to things going wrong in life. So that's why like the ending scene, like her fainting was so dramatic.
I also noticed between the with the dialogue that how the each families both families talk to each other was very different. With the main family, they were definitely close. They were all close with each other, and I picked that up because they were cursing around each other. Me personally, I don't curse around my family, not yet, no. But they was cursing around each other, so that made me feel like they were very comfortable. But I'm also not sure of the fact that because they were more poor and how their house is more confined, it kind of forces them to be more closer to each other as compared to the rich family. The daughter had her own diary, was not really talking to the family. And when it came time for her brother's birthday party, she was like, telling the main boy, "Oh, why don't we just stay up here? Miss Girl, your brother's birthday party's downstairs. Why don't you want to be around him?" So I just noticed that aspect as well.
Like a quote or something from the script was like when I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Kai Wu or something, like when they were he was talking to his dad Kai take I can't pronounce their names, but it was what he was saying, like basically the dad was just saying like, what kind of plan never fails, or no plan at all. Like there was no plan, why. That was kind of like, it kind of stood out to me because I feel like kind of what he said was kind of profound. Like I feel like they put that in the script for maybe more so like a reason or something, because I feel like I don't know, like I just felt like that was just a meaningful quote that kind of stood out to me in the script.
Yeah, there was like this like theme of a plan being mentioned, and like it seemed like the plan that they had would never work. And then even like in the end, when the son was talking about his plan to reunite with his father, that was like obviously like not realistic. But yeah, I think it kind of was showing like, I guess, like how people that are like maybe lower class or like in poverty, they seem to like always try to be like hopeful, I guess, so they can move forward, but like sometimes it's just like not what's meant to be, or just like not what they're able to do.
Yeah, I agree. Cause I guess like kind of like thinking about like what the whole movie was about, just like the difference in like class structures. I guess like you said, that quote was kind of just saying like how sometimes if you're not in a position to have what you need or get what you need, sometimes even a plan won't really work.
And then like another thing was how the parks would talk about like the way Mr. Kim smelled, and it was just like they were kind of like repulsed by him in a way, because it was like he kind of smelled. They say he smelled like old radishes, so it was kind of like he had like a poor people smell almost. And then like I think that was like what just began uh, his animosity towards the parks, well, Mixer Park especially, and then seeing like at the end the way he Mr. Park did covered his nose again around I think his name is like John C. And that was like what drove him to kill him, because it was just like just this repetition of him thinking that he's like above them and like being disgusted by people below him. It just kind of like set him off. So we can move on to the settings and the costumes in the movie.
I'd like to point out the dichotomy between the houses of the Kim family and the Park family. Um, I noticed that both houses had like a large window in a common area where the families would sit together. And in the Kim house, there was always a man who kept urinating outside. And then the Park house had just like a nice lawn with like beautiful scenery and everything. So I think showing those in the beginning scenes was a big part of establishing, okay, this is the rich family, this is the poor family, this is how they're going to interact for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and then once again, like how the house was like high up and it was like secluded, like up in the mountains. Meanwhile, the Kims lived in the basement, and their house was also not secluded, but it was like away from everything. And like their only like view of the outside world was like their tiny window. Meanwhile, the Parks had huge windows throughout their whole house. And then like once again, how the Parks house, whenever you saw their house, it was like usually like pretty well lit. The scenes look brighter in comparison to the Parks, not the Parks, the Kim's house.
I would like to point out the fact that the movie is based in South Korea, and North and South Korea is different for a reason. And they did mention that when it came time for the original housekeeper, she's like, "Oh, but if I was to go to the North or something like that." I forgot what she had said, but she's like basically said if I was to go to North and if this was to happen in the North, it would not play out how it's playing out right now. So I do want to point that out as well, that they did take into account the difference between North and South Korea. And costume wise, like they definitely made sure that the main character's family wasn't dressed in anything too fancy, basically common clothes or whatnot, like regular schmegular clothes. But there's this one scene where they had it was the montage scene where it was like playing like, oh, after the flooding just happened, they're in the gymnasium looking for clothes. And yet when it came time for the richer family or whatnot, we're seeing, oh, let me walk into my closet, which suit do I want to put on today, you know what I'm saying? So they definitely did do that as well.
Yeah, the Parks just looked nicer overall. Like they were like always dressed fancily. Like Mr. Park always kind of had like a more dressy outfit. Meanwhile, like the Kims always look kind of like disheveled almost. Like there was like a few scenes where Mr. Kim's shirt was like kind of unbuttoned, or like their collars weren't really folded. And their clothes just kind of like not stained, but like dingy almost. I don't know. Like they just kind of like try to obviously contrast it. And then like another thing with that I noticed, like John C, like during the party when he goes upstairs, he's like wearing all black. Well, everyone at the party is wearing like more like brighter clothes, like all the other like wealthier folks. And it was just kind of to show like he didn't belong there. Like he was just like very obviously like standing out, and him wearing all black made him stand out even more in that scene. And then I would say another thing was like the native attire during the party scene. um, which is kind of like ironic, just considering like the transpiration of events. Them like wearing native attire kind of connects it. It was like kind of like a really primal scene in a way. I don't know. It was kind of fitting, I guess, for the situation.
Now that you mention it, and it's crazy that you like think of it like that. It's kind of funny too because they like the stereotype of Native Americans. Oh, these barbaric savages, da 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 da, and you know both dads were dressed up as Indians, and next thing you know, it's kill fest happening. So it seems like they wanted to play on the stereotype as well in a way, maybe, but. Mm.
And then like even when Mr. Kim where when he kills Mr. Park, he takes off the headdress, and it was kind of showing like he didn't want to like, I guess it was him kind of like standing up for like him and his family, like showing like I'm not like one of your workers, like this is me, like I'm my own person. Because like even like right before like their last conversation was him saying like consider this like you doing your job, and it was kind of like he was just kind of trying to command him to like please his son and all this stuff. And then he didn't really see the kids as humans because the whole time he's focused on his son, while his like worker, like his son's tutor, like just got stabbed, and it was like they weren't even paying them any mind. They were just trying to escape. So um, and then finally you can talk about the psychological impact of the film.
I will say like the main thing is that the movie definitely wanted to highlight the division between the different class lives. And they definitely did do a good job because even like again with the flooding and they're in the gymnasium scene and then the mom is over here picking out her clothes out her rich wardrobe and still inviting them over and expecting them to be over for her son's birthday party. They just lost their home. They just lost everything that they had. But you're not thinking of that. You're just thinking of you yourself and your family or whatnot. So it definitely plays a role that the rich are more dense to the fact of what more lower class people have to deal with on a day-to-day basis as compared to what they have to deal with.
Yeah, I feel like just like the whole, like they just basically they was both basically in like two different worlds. Like you got, one family kind of like in a poor lifestyle, not able to, get what they may want or need. And you got this one family that's, have a rich lifestyle and able to get what they want and what they need. So I guess like people may, I guess like the meaning, like I guess the movie Parasite, I guess like, cause I remember like reading on it and it was saying like how, I guess like the director wanted to give it like a double meaning and put it like how the Parks family is also like a parasite because they exploit people. They're able to use people, to get what they need. So it's like thinking about it on a sense, I feel like with just how the way the world is like with like poor and rich and like capitalism is just it can be a parasite just depending on like their perception of like rich people and capitalism and just in all different ways.
Also, I feel like another like small message that could come across is that money doesn't solve anything. Like the family, even though they were wealthy and they seemed to be doing well, they still needed help for their daughter, help for their son. The dad was always out working and the mom was just like all over the place. So that can be another small message. And like in connection to like what the dad was talking about with Kim Woo, like a plan, the best plan is to not have a plan at all. And then connecting it like to the end, like him saying all that and then having like that montage of him buying the house and having the money. I feel like even after that, and then going like it fading back to him being inside his old apartment, like the money won't solve everything. I don't know, just like it won't erase everything that happened is like something that I got from the script.
And one quick thing that I did also notice that I picked up on was that, like, through the rich, the poor are hurting each other, because when the Parks family was away for the camping trip, and when the new housekeeper came and met up each other, they're sitting here fighting over the phone or whatnot, and be like, I'm gonna sit there and tell him, so now you're fired, but we both got fired. So why are we both trying to sit here, like, no one has a job? What is that solving? Why are we sitting here fighting each other when we both sat here and worked for this family? And even at the end, which call it, the poor hurting the rich, causing the poor to hurt each other, um, with Mr. Park sitting here, like the main dad of the family, of the poor family, I should say, like when he sat there and stabbed the rich dad or whatnot, like, you sat there and he did it because the rich dad looked down upon him for no reason at all, causing him to hurt him.
Yeah, just piggybacking off on like what you said right fast. I feel like with basically like both of the family's problems, I feel like it kind of like just in a sense, like how sometimes we as people, we could worried about things that may not even be, it could be as important to us, but compared to like what someone else may be going through, it might not even be like that big of a deal. Like, cause they were worrying about, you know, things like frivolous things. And like, meanwhile, you know, the other family, they lost their home to a whole storm. So it's just, you know, perception based and just understanding like what someone may be going through.
And then even the way that the Kims were looking down on Moon Juan and her husband, like they were looking down on her for like hiding her husband in their basement for years, only for later on they end up in the same situation. Like they were probably like just as poor as them. Like maybe um he was a little bit poor because he was trying to like avoid like debt collectors and all this stuff. But it's just like this continuous cycle, I guess. It's showing like how in a way like society will turn like lower class individuals against each other, when it was like they were so busy like judging each other when they had the same enemy, and their enemy was like the Parks. So I would say that was one thing. And then another thing is like I feel like the movie showed like how class didn't determine talent, because like not Jessica, but I think it was Ki Jung, like she had like an artistic talent, and then her brother like knew English. Like even though they weren't able to like I guess go to like I guess get higher education, like they still did show some sort of talent or skill that was valuable to the park. So it just shows like just because they were poor didn't mean like they weren't really able to do anything. But if there's nothing else, I guess that concludes our DPI. Thought this was really well put together film, like with both like the camera work, the music, and the acting, and I definitely enjoyed it.